The Bureau of Labor and Statistics reported in 2020 that there was a 17% increase for special education teachers for all student ages. The greatest growth occurred at the preschool and elementary level, with a growth increase of approximately 21%, which should make my friend Dr. Tim Swenson very happy. He is an assistant professor of health and human performance at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, whose job it is to get his students excited about pursuing a career in adaptive physical education. He took some time out of his busy Wisconsin schedule to join me this week to discuss the state of the industry and how we get more students excited about adaptive PE. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Professor, if you're ready, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm excited to talk to you today about your work in special education or adaptive special education. So great to be with you this morning, and thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to talk APE. Anytime someone wants to ask some questions, I'm always ready to talk a little shop.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into it, Professor. I know that you're very passionate about teaching future educators about the impact they can have when they dive into the field of special education from an adaptive physical standpoint. So I'm curious to start our conversation by how do you think we can get more PE teachers excited about engaging into special education so that the students they serve can get a fully wholesome experience?
That's a great question. So I teach at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, Wisconsin, which is it's a rural school. And within our teaching education program, we're health and human performance, we have a Phy-Ed major. And when students take the Phy-Ed major, they're automatically enrolled into my adapted PE courses. So a lot of our students come in with little knowledge of what adapted PE is. So it's my job to get them passionate, or at least give them a good understanding of how physical education is important, if not more important, for students with disabilities than the general education students. So I give them a lot of hands-on practical experiences with students with disabilities in my programs, whether it's we have an interaction, a yearly get-together with the Wisconsin School of the Blind, which is located in Janesville, Wisconsin. We do an adapted aquatics class where our students will teach swimming lessons to students with disabilities. We have this local Special Olympics that our students do some coaching with. So through all those experiences, I use that as sort of we talk about the foundation of teaching students with disabilities, but then give them the hands-on experiences and show them the enjoyment that you can get in the world of APE. So I think the more we can just get our students in front of those that have various learning needs and make them well-rounded students, the more we can get them into adapted PE. So
Well, absolutely, Professor. And they tell me this morning that congratulations are in order from a personal perspective because I know that you recently got your PhD just before COVID hit. So, congratulations to you for that. And I'm curious to ask you, since you just went through that process, what do you think makes a good educational leader when it comes to teaching adaptive physical education?
Yeah. I think a good leader is someone who has vision, has an idea, but also understands that it takes a collective group of individuals to sort of meet that vision. So a lot of the program that I went to was focused on higher education as a whole and leadership within the higher education model. But I think there's a lot that can be translated into the world of adapted PE. Adapted Phi Ed teachers, depending on what school you're at, when you're in K-12 or when you're at a college, you're sometimes the only person in that department. It's such a specialized area within Phi Ed at times and special education. It sort of mixes the two worlds. So you have to be able to connect with other people since you can't do everything by yourself. And I think as a disposition of APE teachers, we're really good about reaching out, sharing our vision, connecting with others in order to grow, educate the world of adapted PE. So a leader has vision, they collaborate, they work with others, and they try to inspire others to have others around them be leaders themselves.
Absolutely. I think when we can inspire people to lead by example, we're starting a trend. So, absolutely, I concur there, Professor. And I'm curious to ask you about how do you think we can get kids more physically active with disabilities after they leave gym class, Professor?
That's something we talk about all the time in my classes, and so we talk about the transition process within the U.S. model. There's a transition. So when students become age 14 under the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, there should be a transition plan starting in process through the IEP process through the IEP team that indicates how are we going to take the skills that we've taught students in school and translate them into lifelong learners, jobs, further education. And one part that sort of gets missed out sometimes is physical activity. So within adapted PE, when our students get to be 14, 15, middle school, high school, what's functional skills, what skills do they have, and how can they take those skills to be physically literate, as our national association would say, physically literate movers. So it's through a transition process. It's taking the skills we've learned in school and what is available in your community. Who are the community stakeholders that you can form relationships with? Again, maybe going back to collaboration. Is there a business? Is there a company who's passionate about others with helping students with disabilities and keeping them active? So utilizing parents, they're big advocates, and then using community stakeholders, organizations that can help students stay active. So whether that's a YMCA that's in town, whether that's a local golf course where students can go golfing, what is available. Each community has its own sort of they have, and us as APE teachers reaching out to those community stakeholders to allow our students to be active after high school. So again, a lot of collaboration.
What's the one thing that you think that students need to know to be successful in the field once they graduate?
Probably the biggest thing once they graduate is they're not going to know everything. So we're not going to make them experts. But that's a great question. So I'm working on a research study with another professor, Dr. Brock McMullen, who's the adapted PE coordinator at UW La Crosse, which is a program within our state. And we surveyed teachers within around the US about, what can teacher preparation programs do to better equip students coming out. and it really gets to the heart of your question. So one thing that we found is the ability to collaborate. So being able to work with other motor team members. So the motor team members, physical therapists, occupational therapists, the general physical education teacher, speech and language. There's an interconnectedness between some of the outcomes and goals that we have when working with students with disabilities. So being able to collaborate and work with others would be something that our students need to know how to do. Knowledge of special education laws and how those impact adapted physical education. At times you may have to educate administration on that. Adapted Phy-Ed is a direct service. It is not a related service. So direct service mean under IDEA, this is a service guaranteed to students with disabilities. It's part of their curriculum, and it's not a service in place of another service. So physical therapy cannot replace APE occupational. So a good working knowledge of special education law would be helpful. And then lastly, and there's many things, it's such a good question, but multiple means of instruction and assessment for students with disabilities, being flexible in how we deliver our lessons, multiple means of equipment and equipment options, and not just for students with disabilities, but all of the students in class. And we talk about universal designed learning, UDL, as a way to have students be able to have multiple forms of expression and action when it comes to learning something and then showing their knowledge through assessment. So either them demonstrating a movement or maybe using assistive technology to show us what they know. So our students could have a good understanding of a good flexibility in their teaching. So the students they work with in APE settings can have ways to show their knowledge. So there's a lot though.
Yeah, I think we could focus on this question for a good long while, but I'm also curious to ask you about whether you think having a positive adaptive physical education experience has a positive social benefit as well for the students.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's such a connection between those two, between working in APE and then the social. I know as like the first question you asked, like how do I get my students excited about it, and it's through the hands-on experiences. I can point to one class in general where we do adapted. It's called Adapted Aquatics. Our students teach students with disabilities in the pool, and just the connections that are made because they're teaching a one-on-one or a small group lesson, seeing the students they teach improve over the course of a semester, the relationship that's built with that student. I can point to, quite a few examples of students saying it was that experience in Adapted Aquatics that got me really excited about teaching students with disabilities. But then on the other end, the students that we are teaching, those students with disabilities, the connection of physical movement and social emotional learning is really important. Incorporating social emotional learning targets the affective domain, and within physical education, we reach the psychomotor domain, which is movement, and the cognitive domain, which is knowledge, and the social domain, but also the affective, which is beliefs and attitudes. And we even have a national standard that focuses right towards that affective domain, because understanding the more we move and the value of movement is positively correlated along mental health status and how we feel. So getting our students with disabilities to value movement and the self-expression that comes along with it is really important. So there is definitely a very strong tie between movement and that social emotional learning. So we have to focus on that. So
yeah, absolutely. I think the value of human connection goes a long way in adaptive PE. And I also know, Professor, that prior to your current role, you were the special education instructor for a local school district there where you live. So I'm curious to ask you, how do you think local school districts value the importance of APE?
Yeah, each school has its own culture. There are some schools that highly value it, and there's are some, it's not that they don't value, but I think there's not as much advocacy for it maybe. And that can come from a lot of different places, whether it's the administration and their knowledge on what AP is. So is there a certified teacher in that school district? Wisconsin has a certification, a teaching certification endorsement in adapted PE. So you have a teacher advocating for students with disabilities to be taught in the least restrictive environment, in that correct in the most appropriate environment, to their administration, but also to their parents. Are the parents advocates for children to receive the best possible education in physical education? And when you couple those together with a knowledgeable teacher, parents who advocate, and knowledgeable administration, then you get and a community that backs you too. Then you have a really strong program. So it's a whole group of those that work. So yeah, to say whether there's ones that take it seriously or value, I think it all depends on what is the knowledge of what AP is, and how it is interwoven into the district, the community, the administration. So the school district that I worked for was very very knowledgeable, and we're all gung-ho. I got a lot of opportunities to provide to the students that I taught. We writing, we go golfing, we go bowling, we did a lot of things in the community. And it was the administration that said, hey, what do you want to do? Sure, go do that. If that's going to be best for our students and gonna meet their IEP goals, get them to be active, we're all for it. So
yeah, I think when you have a community of support when it comes to special education, that's a big bonus, isn't it?
it sure is. Yep, it sure is.
Yeah, Professor, I'm curious to finally ask you, what do you think progress looks like in the field of adaptive physical education? How do you think we can measure significant progress in the field?
Yeah, great question. A couple of these. Number one, I think progress would be a really statistical way to look at progress is when all 50 states in the United States would offer APE teaching endorsements. Right now, there are about 14 states that offer an APE teaching endorsement separate than just physical education. So Wisconsin is one of them. When there is more of an emphasis on the importance, and not just the importance of, but the training that goes into teaching highly qualified or certified adapted phys teachers throughout our nationwide, to offer those teaching endorsements, APE teaching endorsements, then I would say that would be progress. When APE is looked on as an expected curricular subject, not a subject that we have to continually advocate for and educate our administrators about, then I think that would be progress too. So and that again comes from teachers who are educated, certified in adapted PE. There's a national certification in the US here called the CAPE, a certified physical educator, through an organization. The more we can get certified adapted PE teachers and branch out across the nation. And there's great teachers. Just because they don't have an APE certification doesn't mean they're great. They do wonderful things for students with disabilities, I'm sure, as well. But the more we can get to a legislative level and say these APE teaching endorsements across the United States are available, then I know that significant progress has been made.
And just finally, Professor, I'm curious to ask you about what sort of an imprint that you're hoping to leave personally in the field, and if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Sure. Well, as far as impact, I don't know, there's so many places that APE can grow, but as far as my impact, gosh, I just hope I can take students who, especially when they come into our program, who don't have a whole lot of knowledge about APE, and inspire them to become APE teachers. My personal goal is when students come into our program that I'm going to, I want a couple of them each year. I want to send them to graduate school. Go get your master's in adapted PE and become a certified adapted FIA teacher. A lot of our students become general FIA teachers, and that's their passion, but it's my job. I want to inspire them, a couple of them, to become certified APE teachers, get their master's in it, maybe even going on to higher ed. Yeah, if they wanted to contact me, I'm at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. Email is swensont@uwplatt.edu. I'm on Twitter. I don't tweet a lot. I use it more just to follow and keep up to date with other professionals in the field though too. So still working on my social media game, but yeah, always love to talk to those who are interested in adapted P2.
Yeah, absolutely, Professor. I really want to thank you for your time, expertise, and insights this morning in the field of adaptive physical education. Really enjoyed our conversation, and I want to thank you for being here this morning. It's most appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah, this was great. Great to meet you. Great to talk. Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Thank you very much, Kevin.